All right, welcome along to our hearings of submissions for Class 4 gambling venues to 2026 review and the TAB Venues Policy 2026 review. We have a number of people in the chamber with us today and some that are going to be joining us online for their submissions. So welcome to everyone. I'll start with apologies, and I have apologies from Councillors McCone and Fanini Ta'iti. Was there any other apologies there? I think that's all. Can I have someone move that? Moved by Deputy Mayor Ryan, seconded by Councillor Linwood. So all in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried. Declarations of interest. Councillor Cowles.
Yeah, look, I'll be stepping out of the room on this one as I run a Class 4 gambling venue, so don't think I should be participating. Thank you.
No, thank you. Enjoy your time out. Deputy Mayor Ryan.
I guess just declaring an interest in the submission from Sport Otago. As my employer, I'll step aside from discussion and questioning on that one.
Okay, so do I have to move those declarations? Thank you. Right, so we'll now move into the hearing of submissions. And just note that we've got a number of written ones and then verbal submissions. We have some of the verbal submission people here now, so we do have the options to take them earlier if everyone's comfortable. So I'm just moving into the submissions part of the... Sorry, I'm getting emails through at the same time. Bear with me while I just get to the right part of our agenda. Who do we have in the chamber right now? Sorry.
We have Dr. Michael Pritchard.
Yep.
And Govan. You're both with Health New Zealand.
Yes. Gotcha.
So we're both with Health New Zealand.
Fantastic. Well, I might bring councillors then to the Health New Zealand submission. I'm just trying to find what page that is. That is page 22 on your agenda, councillors. And I'll welcome so we've got about 10 minutes there. Just welcome to the table. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. And I will pass on to yourselves.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Michael Pritchard, tōku ingoa. I'm a public health medicine specialist and medical officer of health here from Health New Zealand National Public Health Service Southern, and with me I have policy advisor Dr. Gorgon Gurung, PhD doctor, and I'm a medical doctor. Thank you for your time, Mayor and councillors. So if we could go to slide 2, please. So I just want to note that I myself or Health New Zealand don't have a conflict of interest in this area relating to gambling policy or Class 4 gambling machines. Our role is to protect and promote healthy communities and health equity across different populations, groups, by addressing the determinants of health, and that's the upstream determinants. I am conscious that later you will hear from the NZCT. I just want to make a quick point that NZCT isn't a neutral observer of Class 4 gambling policy. Its grant-making function is funded by proceeds from Class 4 gaming machines, giving it a direct interest in the level of revenue generated by those machines. Its role is to distribute gambling proceeds, not to advocate for the policy settings that determine how much funding is available for distribution. Put simply, NZCT's role is to distribute the pie, not to have an opinion on the policies that affect how big that pie should be. It should be neutral on those issues. When NZCT advocates for policy settings that would sustain or increase gambling revenue, it's acting as an interested stakeholder rather than an independent expert. This is particularly important because the Council's responsibility is broader than the availability of grant funding. The Council must consider the wider public interest, including the social, economic and health impacts of gambling harm on individuals, families, whānau and community. So we support retaining the current sinking lid policy and existing relocation provisions. We recommend considering a sinking lid approach for TAB venues too. I'm aware there are none, but this would be a preventative measure. So the evidence does report that sinking lid policies are associated with reductions in gaming machines, gambling venues and gambling expenditure compared with councils that have no additional local restrictions. Research has found that councils with sinking lid policies had approximately 13 to 14% lower gambling expenditure than councils without additional local policies. Importantly, sinking lid was the only policy that showed both an immediate reduction and a continuing reduction in expenditure over time. It's not a quick fix, it is a long-term prevention approach. It gradually reduces opportunities and exposure to harmful gambling. It's worth noting that more than half of New Zealand councils now operate under a sinking lid policy, and we realise that you're under one currently. So when considering gambling policy, it's important not to conflate problem gambling, and next slide please. It's important not to conflate problem gambling with simply the prevalence, with the total burden of gambling harm. So those two things are not the same. Problem gambling is defined very narrowly. It doesn't capture all of the harm that gambling causes. So a common argument used by some with financial interests or from the industry is that there's only a relatively small proportion of people who are problem gamblers. While this is technically correct, that statistic does not capture the total burden of harm. And I will just go, you will hear from the NZCT, they have presented information in similar hearings that minimises the true extent of gambling harm. NZCT may be unaware of what is called the prevention paradox. It's a well-known phenomenon in public health medicine, that's my area of expertise, where most harm at a population level actually comes from the many people at moderate to low risk of a disease or disorder, rather than the smaller number of people at high risk. The classic example of this that people will understand, there are actually, at a population level, more heart attacks come from people with borderline high blood pressure than from those people with extremely high blood pressure. And it's really a simple maths issue. Far more people sit on that moderately high blood pressure group, and only a small number of people are in the extreme. That's the same with gambling harm. More harm actually comes from the general population that's not at extreme risk. So don't be sidetracked when people present that extreme risk. So 82% of harm actually comes from problem gambling categories that are not in the high risk category. So gambling researchers actually advocate for showing real numbers of people affected, not just percentages. So in 2023-24, 8.3% of New Zealanders were at some level of gambling harm, and that equates to 359,000 people. And that's not a small number. Even if you drill down to those at higher risk, you're still dealing with tens of thousands of people. So what does gambling harm look like? So on the screen you can see that there are a wide variety of harms. And actually about a third of all harm is from people who are not directly the gamblers themselves. So this is not just an issue about those who gamble, it's an issue for their family, their whānau. So we have physical and mental health impacts, financial hardship, relationships and whānau harm, family violence. According to the latest New Zealand Economic and Social Costing Study, gambling harm caused around $4.2 billion of harm annually in New Zealand. About $2 billion of that was the health and wellbeing area, and about $1.2 billion was from the financial harms. Just some other high-level stats. 71,000 New Zealand adults felt that gambling had caused them health problems in the last 12 months. This is from a Health New Zealand study. 31,000 people said that their gambling had caused financial problems. And interestingly, 46% of adult New Zealanders felt that raising money through gambling does more harm than good. Now let's compare that to the 8.3% of New Zealanders that thought that there was more good than harm. So 46% compared to 8.3%. And there was a neutral group, so 29% thought that it caused about the same good as harm. So the general population backs this idea, it's not just Health New Zealand, that raising money for interest groups through gambling causes more harm than good. So why do pokies matter? Next slide, please. So pokies are actually the most harmful form of gambling, and that's because they're designed to be so. So gamblers, family and affected others most frequently cite pokies as the form of gambling that causes them harm. And according to Gambling Health Intervention Services data, gambling machines, pokies, are the primary form of gambling among people accessing gambling harm services. They're harmful because they have design features, the rapid speed of play, the lack of breaks, the near miss and losses that are disguised as wins. They're all built into the machine. It's quite a complex psychological design. So we go to next slide, please. So this slide, there's a series of 3 slides that all have a similar graph, but I've just adjusted for different factors as we go through. The blue line is showing pokey numbers in Waitaki decreasing, and yet we've got the red line which shows expenditure, which is actually slightly increasing. So that may make you think, well, does the policy work? We believe it does. If you show the next slide, since we're dealing with dollars, this slide has adjusted for inflation, as you should do over 10 years. So you can see now that that red line is actually tracking down. So I think that's well done. And the next slide, I've just adjusted for population because there has been some population growth in Waitaki over the 10 years. So now you can actually see that the red line has decreased. So I would say this is evidence that at the very least your sinking lid policy is associated with a real terms decline in the amount of losses. So I'd say the message to take from this graph is to stay the course. You've got the right policy there. I'd always advocate for it to be stronger, but sinking lid in terms of a long term, you can see the effects there. Now, obviously, it's multifactorial. There are many things that play into how much gambling expenditure there is, but one of those factors, I believe, is the association we see here with pokie machines.
Just a quick question. Do any of your figures include the online portion of gambling within Waitaki, or do we not know that?
We don't know that for Waitaki. I'm not sure if there is a geographical breakdown or an easy way to do that. I haven't seen it myself. Perhaps you'd have to dive into doing a survey rather than an existing data source.
I guess, and it'd be interesting for something that you could, as an organisation, potentially push for, because I would have thought with, your GPS around your phone usage and where computers are lying, that someone should have access to that level of data, because I think it's an important part of the equation, because I know that the conversations that I have through this is and it'll be part of the questioning at the end of your, I'm sure, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is this pushing our gambling underground and into homes where it's not actually regulated, and understanding how big an issue that is, because that's what we probably as decision makers don't know.
Yes, and I can give an answer to that in general terms. So the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research has looked into that particular issue. If we make gaming machines harder to access, do people spend online? When that research was done, that's not the conclusion that they found. It's actually spending on groceries, retail. That's where the spending goes. And the money spent on gaming machines is also not really from savings money. It's from money that would be spent in your retail sector and groceries. So I'll move through quickly. Sorry, it seems that I'm running short of time. So I want to just make the point that gambling harm is not distributed equally. Māori are 3 times as likely to suffer from gambling harm. Pacific peoples 2.5 times. Asian peoples are also more likely to be experience gambling harm. And also, pokies are often located in areas of socio-economic deprivation. Waitaki actually not as much as the national population, but it's good to be aware of it. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates, it's indicative because it's hard to get precise data. You'll see the red bars are where gambling expenditure happens, so that's reflecting where those gambling machines are. Deprivation 10 is the most deprived areas, and deprivation 1 the least deprived. In the green, you'll see where the grants are distributed to. Now, that can be difficult to know who is actually accessing those grants, but that's the address of the agencies where the money is going to. So it's really, at best, it's a Peter robbing Paul, but it's actually an inverse Robin Hood. So our position is to gambling harm does affect individuals, but also whānau and communities. We've got to look upstream. Pokies are the most harmful form of gambling. Waitaki, it's still, people are losing 4 million every year. Sinking lid policies are a good policy for long term, so we support your existing policy. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Holden.
Some of the graphs that you've just got on your display there are different than what we have in the submission here. Are we able to get those? Or?
Yes, I can forward you everything that you wish.
Thank you. Councillor Thowning.
Likewise, I'd be interested in any evidence or information about the leakage from pokies to online as well.
Yes, so as I say, that what I have read in that area was the New Zealand Economic Institute of Research, their paper. Now, I haven't read anything other than that, and perhaps there is a limited amount of research in that area, but at least when that research was done or that report was written, it didn't see the evidence to support that particular concern.
Thank you. Councillor Linwood.
Thank you. Sorry, just going back to something you said earlier, did you say that gambling harm cost roughly 1.2 billion total per year in New Zealand, or did I write it down?
4.2 billion is the economic estimate. 2 billion of that is health and wellbeing harm, and 1.2 billion of that is financial.
Last one, Councillor Holden.
Sorry, and just this seems to be like a national highlight. Do you actually break it down into regions, these figures?
You'll see that we did have regional data for the Class 4 machines. So 4.07 million every year is lost in the Waitaki region.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you coming to present to us. And yeah, we'll be making some decisions after this, but do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
No worries. All right, so councillors, next up I'm going to bring you to page, sorry, what page am I on here? To the New Zealand Community Trust submission. That's right, I've got 2 different documents up here. Because we have online Ben Hodges. Welcome, Ben. I'll let you introduce your submission and then we'll go to questions after that.
Kia ora tātou, and hi to Michael in the room who's given us some airtime today. We know each other from previous life, so I hope you're well, Michael. To accommodate population growth in Waitaki, NZCT supports a slight increase in your cap to 12 venues and 116 machines. We also encourage you to allow venues to relocate for normal operational reasons. We think this would be a sensible and balanced approach that limits growth while allowing your community to continue to enjoy the economic and social benefits of a locally embedded form of entertainment. This is particularly prudent at a time when international online casinos will soon be legally permitted to operate in Waitaki and funnel your community's discretionary dollar offshore. And I can talk about some stats at the end, some more recent stats. A commonly raised counter-argument to a cap, and you've heard it today, is that sinking lids reduce problem gambling. Look, I think this is well-intentioned, but the position isn't supported by evidence, I would say, based on DIA and Health New Zealand data itself. And I need to share a screen, and just please bear with me as I try to do that. Can you see that screen?
Yes, we can.
The graph? Right. So, since 2014, yes, there have been sinking lids around the country, and they have contributed to a reduction in the number of gaming machines, 16%. That's DIA stats. And over the same period, the Health New Zealand data shows that the combined rate of problem gambling and moderate risk gambling among adults has actually remained broadly stable at 1.8% in 2014, and 1.9%, and 2.4% in 2024. And that figure is for all forms of gambling, pokies accounting for about half. Michael mentioned that it is the most harmful form of gambling, and that is correct based on presentations to problem gambling services. But that number, that proportionality is dropping. Lotto is increasing, and in fact, the number of presentations for pokey related issues has dropped 54% over the last decade or so, whilst Lotto presentations have been increasing. So look, with that graph, that does show that there isn't a correlation between the adoption of sinking lids and a reduction in gambling harm. There has been a report that suggests that, and I think Michael mentioned it, that sinking lids can reduce Class 4 expenditure by around 13%, but reducing expenditure is not the same as reducing harm. Such an argument assumes that every dollar spent on a poker machine is spent by a problem gambler, and that isn't supported by evidence. And so a little bit of context around the rates of problem gambling. About 2.4% of adults are classified as problem or moderate risk gamblers. Compare that with about 17% of adults who drink alcohol hazardously. Despite alcohol causing 7 times greater harm, we don't apply sinking lids to the provision of alcohol because it's understood that doing so would not stop demand, supply, or harm. What we do know is that it would unfairly penalise the majority of people for whom alcohol consumption is not problematic. So this, and also there's been this conversation about whether the growth of online gambling has affected Class 4 expenditure. Well, and Michael showed you that actually DI statistics show that when adjusted for inflation, per capita pokie expenditure in Waitaki has declined 23% since 2016, and nearly a quarter in the last 10 years. Whilst the number of game machines has reduced very slightly, only a handful, but yet the expenditure down a quarter. Nationally, over the same period, online gambling has grown from negligible levels, casino gambling I'm talking, online casino gambling, essentially the same product online, from negligible levels to more than $1.36 billion per annum. That's nationwide, $1.36 billion. That is already bigger than the Class 4 sector as a whole. And that is before we move to a regulated legal environment for online gambling. That's grey market numbers. So look, Class 4 gambling, yes, it's already declining in Waitaki. Accelerating that decline with a sinking lid would not reduce problem gambling in Waitaki, as the graph shows, nor control the growth of online gambling. Its only outcome would be to remove the vital community funding that our sector distributes in your community. Look, whilst the number of people experiencing harm in your district it's small in number, we mustn't diminish the seriousness of that harm. And for that reason, Pokie Trusts fund more than half of the annual $20 million problem gambling levy, which supports a 24/7 nationwide network of treatment and service and prevention services. And I would say, to Michael's point earlier, I think that absolutely the Ministry of Health has an interest in the sector. They received $20 million of revenue from the gambling sector per annum. So yes, they have an interest, and their voice should be heard. But also, we operate in your community in collaboration with local business owners, and we help organisations in your community with funding. So we have an interest, and and as you've given us the invited us to speak today, we appreciate that. In addition to the funding we give to Health New Zealand, NZCT alone spends about $650,000 per year on harm minimisation initiatives, including staff training, resources and technology. Venue staff conduct gaming room sweeps 3 times an hour and intervene if a punter tries to withdraw cash from an in-venue ATM more than once. The staff in venues are trained to identify and respond to signs of harm. So, look, whilst sinking lids don't reduce harm, over time, a sinking lid would eliminate Class 4 grants, which is, as you know, totaled $643,000 in Waitaki in 2024. And the more recent figures have just been released from the DIA. It's now just off $1 million in 2025. These are grants that support employment in your community, generate local economic activity when they're spent with local retailers and service providers, and they help community organisations contribute to a happier, healthier and more connected Waitaki. If this funding were to be replaced by council, and I'm not sure who else would be around to replace it, it would require an estimated rates increase of 1.3% on your 25-26 rates, which I understand are already up 9.4% on the previous year. And on another point, I would advise caution regarding the argument which you heard earlier that Class 4 gambling transfers money from poorer to wealthier communities. Such arguments rely on a piece of research that bluntly applied the deprivation index. And look, to explain that with a local example, most Class 4 venues are located in town centres, and as such, typically register as being in high deprivation communities, despite or perhaps because very few people actually live in the centre of town. So that research was blind to the socio-economic reality of the clientele who frequent town centre establishments. So take the Deprivation 8 Index Last Post Hotel next door to you, for example. Were a grant from money raised at that pub be awarded to upgrades of the BMX track on Bushy Beach Road, that researcher's logic would have coded that as a Dep 1 community taking money from a Dep 8 community. Just as the researcher's logic was blind to reality of the last post's clientele, so too it would have been blind to the fact that that Deprivation 1 BMX track is on old landfill and used by kids from all over Oamaru. So that research applied that same blunt interpretation right across the country. And I think that significantly undermines the conclusions it draws. Similar care is needed with assertions that problem gambling causes crime, violence, drug use, or poor mental health. Yes, while those issues can be comorbid with gambling harm, absolutely, at present there's actually no robust evidence establishing the direction of that causality between those matters. To present problem gambling as the cause and not the effect of those other comorbidities is a matter of conjecture rather than settled fact. I mean, it's difficult to accept that removing pokie machines from Waitaki would make a significant dent on those other problems. Gambling, it's been around for millennia, but it'll never go away. But you can control it, help those that are addicted, and harness that human desire to gamble for community good. That's what the Class 4 gambling model provides. And so I would encourage you to adopt a slightly increased cap to cater for population growth and a fair relocation clause. I think this would make a balanced and evidence-based policy. And just to finish with, here are some of the organisations that try and get the next slide up. How's that? There we go. Oops. That benefit from the continued availability of Class 4 funding. Thank you.
No, thank you, Ben. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Holden.
I think just in regards to your grant recipients, there, is that your figure on page 35, totaling 29,000 for the year or 3 years?
I don't have access to the papers you're looking at, but those class 4 grant examples are from the whole sector, not just from us, from other class 4 funders as well.
So just trying to figure out in the 4 million that we had in the last presentation that comes out annually from the community, how much goes back in?
Yeah, so that was the figure for the most recent financial year, $996,000 of grants. Yeah, so for every dollar that goes into a machine, about 90 cents goes back to the player. That of course leaves about 10 cents in the machine. And then from that 10 cents, you've got rough round numbers, 3.2% goes to grant recipients, this 2.9% goes to, or cents goes to government levies, problem gambling, levy and licenses and so on. About 1.5 for operating costs, and then there's a 1.5% goes to the venues as a to cover their costs and so on of partnering with a class 4 society.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any other questions?
Oh, sorry, actually, I've just, sorry, before someone speaks, there is some more recent data that the DIA have released on online casino gambling revenue, and there is that's where the 1.36 billion comes from, and that's data that's, I think, through 12 months through to, was it November 25, I think it was. And what's interesting is when you cross-reference the communities that have had the highest per capita expenditure on online gambling, when you cross-reference it with DIA statistics on class 4 expenditure, the communities with the highest online gambling expenditure have experienced the largest decrease in class 4 expenditure. So I wouldn't say it's yet, it's just suggestive that maybe there's a cannibalizing effect here, that people are migrating from class 4 to online gambling. And bear in mind that that online gambling will be able to advertise and promote into the pockets of people on their mobile phones, whereas with class 4, there might be a modest sandwich board outside a pub. That's the limit of our advertising.
No, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions we have. So thank you for your time, Ben. And
No problem. Thank you.
do we have anyone else online at the moment?
We have Jared True in the lobby, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, let Jared through. Welcome, Jared. We have you from the Gambling Machine Association of New Zealand. We will go straight to you. We're just working through the verbals at the moment. So yeah, throw to you for your submission, and then we'll take questions when you're done.
Mr. Hodges, can you please close your screen presentation? Thank you.
Right. Well, that was very efficient. Thank you. Right. I'm Jared True. I represent the Gaming Machine Association of New Zealand. We're asking you today to consider amending your relocation provision to enable relocations in any circumstances where we as applicants can demonstrate that the new site is more desirable from a harm minimisation perspective. In relation to your current sinking lid, we recommend that be replaced with a cap of 12 venues and 116 machines. So that's a slight increase on the current numbers. In relation to your relocation policy, the current policy allows council to consider relocations when, due to circumstances beyond the control of the owner or the lessee, the venue cannot continue to operate. So under the current policy, relocation is therefore limited to extreme cases of structural damage, earthquakes, fires, floods, demolition of the building. And our point is that we should not have to wait for significant structural damage. We shouldn't have to wait for a fire, or we shouldn't have to wait for an earthquake or flood to move machines out of an area that may be undesirable to areas that are more desirable. We should be able to move our machines at any time for any reason if the new location is more desirable from a harm minimisation perspective. That would enable us to move venues away from residential areas and move venues away from sensitive sites. It also, importantly, will enable us to move venues from high deprivation areas to lower deprivation areas. And that's the whole purpose and intent behind the amendments that were made to the Gambling Act to allow venues to relocate. The ability to relocate was introduced by the Maori Party as part of the Gambling Harm Reduction Amendment Bill. And the purpose of that was to enable venues to move out of harm's way to more appropriate areas such as Central Business District. The purpose of the amendment and the purpose of relocation was not to help venues when they could no longer operate at their current site due to circumstances beyond the operator's control. Parliament wanted venues to move out of undesirable locations regardless of the reason for the move. We should also at any stage be able to move our machines out of an earthquake-prone building. We shouldn't have to wait for the building to burn down or be subject to a flood to do that. If we don't allow more flexible relocation, that's not going to result in fewer machines, it just simply entrenches the machines in their current location, which may be unsafe or undesirable. It's also important that the relocation policy be flexible enough to allow venues to move to new, modern, smaller premises. Having new, modern hospitality premises is fantastic for the district. It revitalises business districts, helps with the local economy, helps create employment, and helps promote and encourage tourism. In relation to your sinking lid, time has now come to look at a cap. A cap is reasonable. The problem gambling rate in New Zealand is very low by international standards. It's only 0.5% of the adult population. The local problem gambling presentations are also very low. Only 2 new clients in the last 12 months data that we have available attended any of the help services that are available, which includes face-to-face counselling, the phone service, text service, and email service. Only 2 new people in a 12-month period from your district attended any of those services, and that's in relation to any form of gambling, not just simply playing a game machine. Importantly, there's no direct link between gaming machine numbers and problem gambling rates. Over the last 10 years, we've seen gaming machine numbers reduce significantly. We've lost a quarter of our machines, a 25% reduction. However, in that same period, that same 10-year period, the problem gambling rate has stayed the same. It has plateaued. There is significant benefit that comes from having the machines. The machines generate extremely valuable funding for local community and sporting groups. In 2024, that was almost $650,000 in local grants. And you also have, I think, 3 club venues that use the money from the machines to support their members and to promote the services that they offer. People enjoy playing our machines. It's a form of entertainment, and approximately 70% of adult New Zealanders gamble at least once per year. We are moving very rapidly into a different era now with online gambling coming into force. If a more restrictive policy is retained, it's unlikely to reduce problem gambling, but will accelerate the migration to offshore-based online gambling. Online gambling is already very, very popular, with 27% of adults participating in some form of online gambling, and 19% of that group doing so weekly. The government's in the process of granting licenses for online gambling providers. And as part of that process, they commissioned a report that looked at what our current online gambling spend was. And in the 12 months to September 2025, the online gambling spend was $1.36 billion and growing at 10.5% per year. So that's already significantly larger than the game machine spend in New Zealand. The license process is currently underway. Expressions of interest have just closed. They will be approved. We have an auction for licenses in September, and from the 1st of December, there will be 15 licenses granted. With the 15 licenses comes a new ability to advertise on online gambling and a new ability to offer player bonuses and player inducements to gamble, which will see an even greater rise and acceleration in online gambling. And online gambling compared to our physical environment is of course less desirable. Only 4% of the online profits will be used for grants. 100% of our profits get used for grants. There's absolutely no local employment that's generated from online gambling. You'll find that the vast majority, if not all, of the online operators are large corporate entities based offshore. There's unlimited prizes offered in the online world. Our machines, the prizes are limited to $500 per machine, $1,000 if there's a jackpot. In the online world, there's frequent inducements to gamble. Put $100 into your account, they'll double it, make it $200. There's no inducements to gamble in our physical Class 4 environment. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Jared. Councillor Thowning.
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in the sources of your information on the online gambling being a relatively new thing. It's any evidence we can get on that would be welcome.
And so in my written submission, I've quoted the various reports, the various international reports that talk about the growth of online gambling, the reports from the Department of Internal Affairs, which talk about the gambling spend, which detail the spend over time, the current spend and the predicted growth. They're all cited in my written submission.
Have you specifically got some citing there about the leakage from electronic gambling machines to online gambling?
Yeah, I do. So in paragraph 57 of my written submission, we talked about what we saw with the COVID lockdowns. So within the COVID lockdowns, we had all our physical venues closed, and then we saw that massive acceleration of people signing up to play My Lotto online. The My Lotto online spend from 2018, pre-COVID, was $201 million. That went to 430 million in 2020 when the venues were closed. So we saw a migration of people playing Lotto in the physical stores to going online with COVID. We saw the same with Sky City's online casino. 2018, pre-COVID, when you could play the physical machines, they had 25,000 registered players. As soon as our machines were closed as a result of COVID, we saw those registrations go from 25,000 up to 48,900, basically doubled. And in paragraph 58 of my written submission, I've quoted an Australian paper which talks about the migration, that how individuals switch from one form of gambling to another, from switching from venue-based gambling to online gambling when the venue-based gambling is not available.
Thank you. And I'll have a look at those. We've also got some other evidence pointing in the other direction, which we'll be able to compare, so that's very useful. And I was just wondering, finally, the increase of players going online during COVID, what happened after when the gambling machines were available again?
Yeah, so our machines, we did have a number of our players return back to our machines, but we also saw that the registration and spend with the online providers was quite sticky. Once people had got used to that medium, and of course they can do it from the comfort of their home, that became a more common and more frequent form of gambling. Once they'd been introduced to that, once they set up an account, once they were familiar with it. Because you can play, of course, exactly the same games that we have in our physical venues online. They just have larger prizes, and you're able to play currently on using your credit card.
Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Matt Avondale. Thanks for your presentation, Jared. Just a question with regards to the two clients in the Waitaki who've taken up the help and support. Are those, were they mandated or were they voluntary?
We don't know. So the Ministry of Health funds the face-to-face counselling services, the phone services, the text services, the email services. And part of that funding contract, when someone approaches those services, they ask the person, they record how many people they see, and they ask the person what their primary mode of gambling is. So those referrals are confidential, of course. So We don't know whether they've been venue initiated where a venue staff member has encouraged them to go along. It might be the gambler themselves that decided to go along, or could quite commonly be friends and family of the gambler that's helped them with that referral.
Thank you.
Councillor Holding.
Not sure quite how to answer this question too, but in the papers, the ones for are sort of suggesting 9 more machines allowed in the whole district, and the ones against are saying no. I'm just trying to think, what does 9 machines actually mean?
9 machines would just be 1 more venue, just be restoring your numbers back to what they were a few years ago, and keeping the machines in line with population growth.
All right. That's all the questions. Thank you, Jared, for your time. Appreciate it. And
Thank you.
right, councillors, we'll move you now on to. I don't think we've got Daniel Martin here at all. We haven't seen him online.
No, I've just messaged the front desk to see if he has turned up, but I haven't heard back from them yet.
That's right. We can go to him if he does arrive. So if we go to page 17 of your agenda, councillors, which is Connor Bowl, and just recognising that he is comfortable with our draft policy and venue policy. There's no extra commentary on that one. We will jump past Daniel Martins in case he does arrive, onto Sport Otago. Did you want to stay in the room for that one? So Deputy Mayor Ryan, just being an employee of Sport Otago, has left the room.
So just with regards to Dan Martin's one on behalf of Musical Theatre Oamaru, he wasn't speaking to the submission on behalf of MTO.
Okay. No, that's understandable. So we can go back to the MTO version of one shortly. So in the Sport Otago, I guess it's that how many groups are relying on that funding is the main argument there. There is no one to ask questions to, so I think we'll just take that as read, unless there's anything anyone wanted to raise on that. No. Right, I'm just... yeah, we can bring Deputy Mayor Ryan back into the room. So now if we go to Musical Theatre Oamaru, Councillor Lewis, do you have a page number for me there? I'm jumping between too many. Or anyone has a page number on that one? 18. Oh, right, so 18 on behalf of Musical Theatre Oamaru, and that's very much talking about the machines benefiting in a funding sense. So I'd like to see a review of the sinking lid policy, so that's back to that, talking about caps rather than a sinking lid version. Right, so then the final one in the written submissions there is the Lion Foundation, which I'm guessing is about 9. Page 37, councillors, thank you. Again, no one presenting to this one, so taking it as read. And they're talking as well about replacing the sinking lid with a cap. So I guess that the main conversations we're going to be having are probably going to revolve around relocation and whether sinking lid or cap is our preference. No word on Mr. Martin?
No, nobody's replying.
No. So Daniel Martin isn't here, but we have got... we have a written version for his individual submission? I'm just trying to... I thought I read something somewhere. I'm just trying to find that on our agenda.
Page 18. Oh, no, sorry. 16.
Page 16. and that's very much discussing the online gambling side of things and the gun regulation, and it's probably a bit of a extension on the one that his name was on for musical theatre around the ability to fund or gather funding as a community. So that covers all of our submissions, councillor. So if I bring you back to it's about page 4 of our agenda, and I guess I'll pass to, is it Mr. Cook or Mr. Bardsley, just to talk about, Mr. Bardsley, where we go from here.
So thank you, councillors, and obviously you've heard from the submitters and the written submissions, and it really is up to councillors now to take on board the submissions, and in line with the current policies that we have, what changes that you believe could or should be undertaking, changing from a sinking lid to a cap. There's quite a simple process, although having a cap then means that that we stay at that level. So premises can change, come in and go. Machines can change between venues as long as that cap's not breached. The relocation policy that was mentioned, that is something that could be easily reworded if that's something that you decided that you wanted to follow. Just noting that it was identified that in the policy the venues must be in a business 1 or a 1A zone, and currently that's the case, but that also is our lower deprivation areas as well, as was identified in one of the submissions. So perhaps we would need to look at those zoning issues as well as moving them away from those lower deprivation areas. The Health New Zealand submission in regards to a sinking lid policy with the TAB venues policy, again, we could add that in quite easily. That would basically then set it as 0 because there aren't any at the moment. And just noting, I don't know what effect the closing of Oamaru Trotting Club or Racing Club at the North End will have in regards to TAB, or whether TAB in the future may want to have a site here in Oamaru. I don't know. We don't know what the impacts of that are. One thing that was in the paper to council was the recognition of the Online Casino Gambling Act and the fact that the government has recognised there's an online gambling issue and put some legislation in place. It's very early. It only came into effect in May, so reporting from DIA in regards to effects won't be available, I would imagine, for at least a year or two. They're quite slow in regards to their data that they provide, even for the Class 4 gambling. So really, it sits with councillors, but whatever it is that's decided, we can provide information on the practicalities of actually implementing that. But most changes in regards to sinking lid or caps is pretty easy to do. Any questions? Happy to answer.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Bardsley? Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Just a question on the relocation provisions. Is that linked at all to whatever option like we opt for, or is a more flexible relocation provision available either way? Like, is that linked to the sinking lid policy, or if we were to introduce a cap, if we were to continue the sinking lid policy, but is there flexibility for relocation in that, or what does that look like? Just that being one of the themes that's come through.
The current state of the policies in 2022, when we last reviewed them, there was a question from the councillors in regards to adopting a sinking lid policy and a tougher relocation policy to address gambling harm issues. That was the feeling at the time amongst particularly the mayor and some of the councillors. So that was in conjunction with that at the time. If we separated those out, there's nothing one doesn't exist with or without the other, not mutually exclusive. So, we could change to a cap and also amend the relocation policy. Relocation policy would be a little bit trickier because we'd need to look at our new zoning under the new district plan and where our deprivation areas are. That could be a little bit trickier, possibly. I'm not sure. We need to have a good look at that.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Andrew. Do you have any knowledge of any other councils that have a relocation policy? And if so, do you know if it's an officer decision or a decision based on just a set criteria or a decision made by councillors?
I'm not 100% sure of the answer to that. It definitely wouldn't be an officer decision. It'd be part of the policy review. So information that we bring to the elected members for them to make their decision could help to inform that decision making. But no, it's an elected member decision on anything to do with the review and the policy.
Councillor Schlack.
Through the chair, Mr. Bartley, when I told my wife this morning we're talking about a sinking lead, she had no idea what I was talking about. So just to make absolutely clear that I fully understand that eventually, if this policy continues with this sinking lead, we're going to end up without any class 4 machines within the district of Waitaki. Do I understand it correctly?
I think that councils that adopt a sinking lid policy, that's the desired outcome eventually, but noting that since we've adopted it, we haven't had any reduction in venues or machines. It could be something that happens in 10 years, it could be 100 years, but the purpose is to reduce the number of venues and machines over time, but then what that time period is just conjecture.
And it means that there's no ability for new ones or to be any increase is probably the main outcome.
Yep, understood. Thank you. I still got something to say, but you're going to tell me off, so I'll wait until we get to the debates.
Well done. Councillor Linwood, then Councillor Lewis.
You might not be able to answer it, but if a pokey machine breaks and it dies, can it be replaced, or that this is what this is? It stops it from being replaced if it dies.
No, that's not the intention of the sinking lid. It's if a premises changes its licence position. So the Gambling Act for Class 4 gambling and electronic gaming machines, venues that registered their premises, I can't remember, it was after a certain date, the maximum number of machines is detailed by the legislation. And so with them, with one of the submissions, they said that the cap would mean one more venue and 9 more machines. So that's where you are. So one venue is allowed 9 electronic gaming machines if they registered after a certain date. I'd hate to put you wrong in terms of what that date is. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But if a machine breaks down, then it just gets repaired. So they're allowed to continue to have those number of machines under their licence. But if they surrender their licence, then or they reduce the number of machines on their own, then they can't be replaced.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you through the chair. Mr. Barsley, thank you for that. Just a question with regards to a change from sinking lid to an increase in a cap. Just following on from Councillor Linwood's question, I guess in some respects, is there a risk whereby the number of there could be a combination of a venue and you wind up with a super venue effectively with a large number of machines that doesn't exceed the cap, it doesn't exceed the number of venues, but through an amalgamation or something to that effect, is that a possibility by moving away from a sinking lid policy?
Sorry, I can't definitively answer that, but there's something in the back of my mind, which is talking about incorporating clubs. I think there are some rules around clubs actually joining together. That's basically a relocation from one of the clubs or one of the license holders. So that's a relocation. So they can't take their license or the number of machines with them. That'd be my understanding. Yeah, I don't think you're able to do that. I don't think, but that's not to say that you can't.
And I guess kind of crux of that conversation is two things. One, around the relocation policy, that at the moment they can't just relocate and keep their number of machines viable. So there's some question that if it's to a better location, that that should be allowed for. So if we went down that track, maybe there is a stipulation so you don't end up with the joining forces of a number, because that's probably a risk in itself. But certainly the relocation policy at the moment now does mean that if there is a better site that is in a less deprived area, that is a choice they can't currently make without losing their licence. Would that be fair? Yeah. All right, is there any other questions, councillors? Right, well, I'll bring your attention to page 5, which is where our recommendations are. One just is receiving the information, hearing the submissions, then we consider, and we're looking at number 4 is providing officers with a direction. I guess, does anyone want to lead with a motion or their thoughts in that space? Councillor Slack.
Yeah, thanks to all the submitters providing an incredible amount of data and graphs. And I think, whichever way on the side of the fence you are, you pick the data that suits your argument, I suppose. So I got through all of that. I've actually got a total different view on all of this, and that is the one of choice. I greatly believe that we live in a democratic country and we can make choices for ourselves, and for making choices, that also means you take responsibility on them. And I am not a gambler. I play cards occasionally, and the only time that I gamble is when I was on a cruise ship and that money disappeared to Alaska somewhere. So the point I'm making, though, is that eventually, with this policy in place, sinking lid, basically council would restrict my ability to enjoy, or my wife's, or anybody for that matter, to go and entertain themselves in a pub for any period of time that they would like.
Now, Councillor Slack, I'm going to just interrupt you for a second. Can I get you to put a motion on the table and then you can finish speaking to it, because I can get a seconder for that first.
Very well. I will put a motion that the policy, and you can words around there what the policy is, that the policy is amended to include a cap which equals the current number of poker machines or class 4 machines that are currently allowed under the policy.
Okay, so we've got, that would mean leaving 1 to 3, you're happy to move, and then number 4 is, I guess, instructing officers to apply a cap provision to the draft Class 4 Gambling Venues Policy 2026. And the draft TAB venues policy, well, it's not that, and I guess it's not included in the draft venues, but two separate ones prior to deliberations. So I'm just thinking how we word that entirely. Arlene, I'm looking to you.
I'll pop it up on the screen for you in a second.
Thank you. Now, when I've got that sorted, I'll look for a seconder.
And also, I think adding to that, Councillor Schlack says that the cap that equals the current number of Class 4 gambling machines.
Yes. Yeah. So that's moved from by Councillor Schlack. I'll just wait for it to be on the screen, but I think Councillor Lewis is happy to second that.
I just wanted to clarify that is at the current settings, so 11 venues operating 107 machines. That is not the increase to 12 and 116, is that correct? Because if that's correct, then I'm happy to
Yeah, that's correct. That's the current level that we're at the moment.
Okay. No stress at all. Right, Arlene's just going to share that so we know what we're talking about. All right, so I'm just having a read through on that one. The first three are pretty easy, but number 4, instruct officers to apply a cap provision to the draft Class 4 Gambling Venues Policy 2026, a cap that equals the current number of Class 4 gambling machines prior to deliberations. And I wonder, because we're a bit silent on that as to the draft TAB's venue policy. So I guess it's probably a second part of that might be that leaving the current venues policy as drafted or something. Like, is that where your thinking's at?
Haven't got that far yet. I was just getting my head around this
Okay, well,
Class 4 one.
that's cool. What we might do is we can do the draft TAB venues one as a number 5 when we get to it. Okay, so I'll let you finish talking to it, Councillor Schlack.
I believe my seconder would like to make a change to this before I talk to it.
Councillor Lewis, what would you like to change?
It was just to the current number of Class 4 gambling machines and venues. I think it's important that we're not increasing the number of venues. That hasn't been highlighted in that, going from 11 to 12.
Comfortable with and venues?
Happy with it.
Right, so we'll add venues to number 4. So that's moved by Councillor Schlack and seconded by Councillor Lewis. Right, back to you, Councillor Schlack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said earlier, I have strong views around having a choice and having a responsibility of choices that I make, and I think that applies to whatever we do in life. And I would not like to see to have that choice impeded by a council policy in terms of a choice I can make in a venue for entertainment or for whatever reasons I do to gamble, and therefore I believe that this motion, if supported, will remain the status quo as it is. If in the future we need to change that, then we can still do that. But I would not like to see at this stage that the number of Class 4 machines and venues are reduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thowning, then Councillor Holding.
I'll support this motion today, but for quite different reasons. I'm more concerned about the online thing is very new, and there's a bit of conflicting evidence. I've skim-read them both, but they neither of them are very definitive, actually. I think it's probably good to hold the line where it is now, just in case there's an unintended consequence of the sinking lid reducing the availability of the physical gambling machines in this district that might create a leakage to online gambling. And I think it's going to be much better for the pastoral care of those gamblers, the problem gamblers, if they're identifiable, and the nature of the online world, the ease of the access to that the lack of age control, and frankly the 2026, the online gambling, these new regulations, they don't include a firewall at all. There's no blocking. I can't see that they will control the illegal online sites. They've got some controls, but not to the extent that I believe will be effective. So I think I'll support it today, because I think if we hold the line, and hopefully at the next review we'll have more evidence of the effect of that leakage to the online, and we'll have we'll be able to see how effective these new regulations are.
Councillor Holding.
I had similar thoughts along the lines of Councillor Thowling, so I won't repeat what he said, but I just did have a question on the current cap. I know we're into motion time, but our licence that we have currently for the amount that we have noticed, is that off a population base pro grata?
It was based off the kind of the population base back in 2022, and yeah, whether you do it off a population base or just cap it on the numbers that we have at the moment. I don't know that population base plays too much of a role, given how much it's actually grown.
Councillor Longwood.
Thank you. I will support the motion in front of me for the reasons that Sven outlined, but if I can just touch on a point that Councillor Schleck made, that gambling is a choice. I just think it's worth acknowledging that in some cases it's not a choice. I grew up in a home where gambling was very prevalent, and it certainly wasn't a choice. It was like a mental health addiction, and it can have really severe outcomes for people. So I do just want to say that, because it is easy to sit here on our high horses and say that you've got the choice to make that, because in all honesty some people just don't have that. And last year to lose $4 million and only get $1 million back just doesn't quite add up in my mind.
Mr. Bardsley.
Just in regards to the wording of the motion, can we just change gambling to gaming machines? Not sure that it makes that much difference, but might be better.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm sure the mover and seconder are comfortable with that. Councillor Lewis.
Just to speak to the reason I'm seconding this is very much, I think the online world is an unknown quantity at the moment. There's so many things happening. And I think with regards to central government regulations, unsurprisingly, still being made up, excuse me, as it goes on. So we are kind of in a way shooting in the dark. What this does, I think, is it ring fences where it is. It gives us the opportunity to revisit. It's pretty much a holding pattern, which I think is where we need to be at the moment. But like Councillor Linwood, I'm not a gambler. I have no interest. I work too bloody hard for what I don't have at the moment. So I think that it's actually a duty of care to consider the people who don't have that opportunity, or who are consumed by it. And part of me sort of feels that at least if they're in a contained, managed area, that's better than whatever else is happening somewhere else. So that's the reason I'm more than happy to second this motion.
Yeah, just for my 2 cents worth, I will support the motion. I do it a wee bit uncomfortably, because I do still think, there's a general overall issue with gambling in our community, and it does do genuine harm, and where we can support our community to minimise that, I think that's really important. That being said, I think there's a few things at play here. At the moment, we don't have a good enough understanding of, by taking it out of our venues where there's a public element, and there is, talking to Councillor Cowles earlier before he left the lunchroom, it was around, and it was really interesting to understand how much they do have to do to kind of be really aware of how things are operating within their perspective, within their establishments, and how often they're checking on people, what they have to be aware of. And I think that that's a lot more caring and future focus for the way we operate as a community. It's wrapping that around and making sure that someone is being tapped on the shoulder and saying, hey, there's a problem here, should you stop, or is there people you can talk to? There's that next stage, and I see that as a glaring hole for our online community, and that's what worries me. So I feel like this isn't increasing the problem, it's not solving the problem, but we also haven't solved in this whole mix. And I had this in front of me, I guess it must have been 6 years ago. I'm not sure how often we have this policy in front of us, but last time I had this in front of me as a councillor, it was the same conversation, and as a community we weren't feeling ready to fill that hole that it left for our sports teams and our community organisations and the funding side of things, and what that means for, whether Rates picks it up or someone else picks it up. We haven't solved that as a country yet, which worries me, because if we're watching sports teams and organisations fall over in this process, that doesn't fix things either. But the maths doesn't work. You're right around the 4 million in and 1 million back out to the community. Thank you very much. So there's still a big problem here, but I don't think it's particular to Waitaki. I think it's a nationwide conversation that needs to continue and needs to be solved. Again, that this policy in the time that I've been here hasn't moved the numbers. So the sinking lid hasn't sunk the numbers up till now. So it's a bit of a moot point almost, where we're discussing whether it's a sinking lid policy or leaving it the same is potentially going to have the same outcome anyway. So I'm quite comfortable in that respect. But whether it's a council responsibility, I think everything can sit on council's shoulders, and quite often it's not really council's responsibility or a national conversation, and where that should sit. I hate the fact that we are this many years down the track and we're having the exact same conversation with no answers. I think that's a problem. But that being said, happy to support. Was anyone else wanting to speak to the motion? Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Oh, actually, just a question, because this will have to come back to us to formally adopt. Like, we're not making the final decision today, are we? No. Yeah, I guess it's a tricky one, because you sort of, the argument is kind of gambling is bad versus community organisations need the money, and, Mayor Tavendale's right, we do need to find more sustainable funding models. And I guess, echoing Mayor Tavendale's point too, whether it's a cap or a sinking lid, we haven't had any reductions. So, I think my preference would probably be to retain the sinking lid, but perhaps with some additional flexibility around relocation. But I mean, I guess that there's not too much difference at this stage of what we're looking, and we do review the policy every 3 years. It's such a tricky one. I think, because it's not just a funding issue either. It's like it's a values issue, and are we allowing a system where profits are extracted? With limited return. I think my preference would be to retain the sinking lid, but with that flexibility. So for that reason, I probably won't support the motion ahead, but I will, I guess, be following this process and having heard the submissions today, spending a bit more time reflecting on those presentations before making my final decision later.
Thank you. So based on the first 4 that we've got, I'm going to put those. Happy to put them as one, or actually I might put them separately if you're voting against portions. So we'll start
1 to 3.
1 to 3. I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried. And then number 4, which is a new one up there around a cap rather than a sinking lid provision for the draft Class 4 gambling venues policy. I'm going to put that. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against?
No.
That's carried. And then I think we do need number 5 in there now, which is around the draft TAB's venue policy. Do we have any amendments, or do I have someone with a stance on the draft, on the TAB venues policy? If there's none, what I'll do is I will do we need to have anything instructed to officers if we're happy with the current content?
No, I don't think so. I'll just bring it back to council next month with a recommendation that it's retained in its current form.
Right, so we'll stay silent on that if everyone's comfortable with that. So with that, that should be the end of our meet. Mr. Cook.
Were you making any recommendation about relocation?
That wasn't in the... Did I have anyone wanting to make any recommendations on the relocation? Councillor Fowling.
Wouldn't the cap essentially make the relocation one null and void? Because if there's a cap, if we lost one, we'd be able to have another one come back.
Yeah, so effectively the cap changes the situation because the sinking lid is once one's removed, you can't replace it with anything else. Whereas a cap allows you, so say we have 11 now, if one was to close down, it means that someone else could apply for a licence, maybe at that same location or at another location.
So yeah, I think we can stay silent because I think it'll be resolved through the number 4 resolution. Fantastic. So with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you for everyone watching and for those that have submitted today. Appreciate your time.